One of the best things that I ever did for myself was starting to build up my little mental move toolkit with a bunch of tools that would help me to stop overthinking. And in this video, I want to share with you one of my favorite tools that I've been using recently that you can use whenever you're getting those feelings of self-doubt, the what if moments, so that you can move on before those thoughts start to suck you in. Welcome to Grow With Intention, the podcast for people who want to create a life that feels good. So step one of dropping the overthinking habit is to understand what's actually happening when you're overthinking. So when you are overthinking, you are over investing in your imagination. You are over investing in the possibilities, the what ifs. For example, what if that person thinks I'm stuck up because I said that thing? What if I end up alone? What if I lose my job? What if I'm not capable? Even if the thoughts aren't coming in the form of a what if, usually there's a what if behind them. And your mind is weaving beautiful, vivid, rich in detail stories about the possibilities, about the hypotheticals. So much so that you actually almost detach from reality. Just like when you're watching a really crazy movie and you kind of zone out, it's like you're not really in your body, you're very much in your head. The same thing happens when you overthink. You're not in touch with your common sense. You're not really in touch with what you can physically see, hear, feel. The present moment has gone. You might even notice yourself genuinely detach or tap out of reality when you overthink, to the point where you sort of have to bring yourself back to the room because you're so in your head that you're not paying attention to what is going on around you. It can be that intense that you lose your awareness of what is. This is where I want to introduce you to the bridge mental move, which is something that you can add to your mental move toolkit when you're experiencing overthinking. That helps you to get a better grip on reality in those moments. This might seem kind of silly, but it's something that I find helpful. So imagine a scenario where someone sends you a short reply over text. If that's not something that would trigger your overthinking, think of another scenario that would. So in that moment, you're overthinking it and you're like, wait, what if they're angry at me? What if I said something that they think is rude? In that moment of overthinking, you want to hold still and imagine you are on a bridge in your mind. On one side of the bridge, you've got your senses. You've got what you can see, hear, touch, smell. You've got your common sense. You've got your wise self. Reality is on that side of the bridge. Direct evidence of what exists in the here and now is on that side of the bridge. That side of the bridge is reality. So for example, on that side of the bridge, the fact of they sent a text that was short with a full stop, that's reality. There are no assumptions there. There is no story there. There's no imagination there. That's what happened. On the other side of the bridge is imagination land or story land. In imagination land, there are all these extra details that your mind has added to beef up the story. For example, they're angry at me. They think I'm blank. These are assumptions that aren't based on reality. They are made by your mind. You can't see them. You can't touch them. They don't exist anywhere and there's no direct evidence for them. They are completely imagine-based ideas. So you want to pause between the two sides of the bridge, the two worlds for a moment, if you will, and notice both sides. Then it's up to you. Do you want to go further into imagination land, story land, or do you want to go towards reality? You don't need to argue with imagination land. You don't need to argue with story land. You just need to acknowledge that it is imagination and it is story, that it isn't based in reality, that it was created by your mind. Because unless you can acknowledge that, your imagination can be so good that it can convince you that it's real. It can feel so real. You know how people tell you to visualize your goals because your brain doesn't really know the difference? Same goes here. Your imagination can tell you that person is angry at you. You are going to lose your job. Actually, you are going to get really sick. And if your imagination is good, which it probably is if you overthink, it can convince you that it's not imagination land, it's reality land. So your only job if you go into imagination land is just to notice whether it feels helpful, whether it leads you towards helpful behaviors and actions and thoughts and feelings, but do that without any judgment. This is about gradually giving yourself the ick when it comes to overthinking. I created a whole podcast episode on that by just deeply noticing how it feels to overthink without judgment. Today's episode is short and sweet. That's just one little mental move from my mental move toolkit when it comes to overthinking. I think it's good to get a little collection of them going that you can apply at the right moment at the right time. Because sometimes one thing works, sometimes another thing works. I do have a few more episodes that are pretty focused on overthinking. I'm going to have them linked in the description or the show notes. Now let's talk Recs of the week. At the end of every podcast episode, I share the Recs of the week to help you to dive deeper into the topic of today's podcast. And today's podcast episode is a website. It's called ICBT Online, and that is where this mental move comes from. It's definitely not me generated. This is from ICBT, a therapeutic tool that's actually designed for OCD thinkers usually, but I find it helpful for just general anxiety. They have a ton of handouts, a ton of explanation worksheets, if that's something that you want to dive deeper into. The next rec of the week is Recreate Your Life by Morty Lefko. I discovered this book so long ago and it describes a process so similar to what I have just described, but without so much the bridge visuals. But I find the bridge visuals really helpful. And I know that this process process sounds so simplified, but once you practice it a bunch of times, it is so helpful. The Morty Let Go process more so focuses around like relearning beliefs, changing your old beliefs based on old memories, but it's a very, very similar idea. Those recommendations will be linked in the description and show notes as always. I appreciate you so much, and I'll see you soon.